Well, hey guys, welcome to another week of California Haunts Radio. My name is Charlotte, and I am your hostess for the evening. And it's great to be here. I still don't have AC, but it's cooled down quite a bit, down to about, I guess, 83, 84. So it's kind of nice. Tonight's guest is a good friend of mine. I met him years ago. I think it was on Facebook. I don't remember exactly how. But he was when I first started California Haunts Radio, he was the first guest I ever had on. And his name is Tim Yancey, and he was so kind to come on for me. And I remember we had problems because I was trying to figure out where I was going to host the show and all that. And I ended up doing this thing on buying this software called Pirate Radio, and right in the middle of the show, everything died all at once. And he was very kind because I got a hold of him, and he was more than willing to come back on. So that was probably around 11, 12 years ago, maybe longer, maybe 15 years ago, something like that. But back is Tim. This is the second time. This is a big historic moment for us. So let me bring Tim Yancey on. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, how are you?
Good. It's been a long time.
It has been a minute, hadn't it? 12 years. Has it been that long?
Yeah, it's been 12. You're right, 12 years.
Wow, long time, man. So how you doing? What's wrong with the AC?
It finally did. I'm going to do the wall AC, an older unit, so it finally decided to crap out, so I have to get everything sprayed on the inside to clean it. And it's just because we're at the end of summer, there's really no point doing it, because we got maybe another week of hot, and that's it.
Well, yeah, that's true.
You know. So how are things with you? You've had a lot of life-changing events going on.
Oh, my gosh, 12 years ago. Between then and now has been a lifetime of Ripley's Believe It or Not. We were just out in California a couple of months ago up in LA. There's a group there called 1895 Films. Mm-hmm. And we were in NoHo, they call it. And they got together a huge group of Amityville people. Who have been involved in that whole thing. Eric Walters, Laura DiDeo, some of George's personal friends, the best man at his wedding, the guy he used to build motorcycles with, me, all kinds of folks. And they're doing, I don't know if you saw the first one on Ed and Lorraine Warren called Shock Docs.
Right.
But I was a little involved in that. But the next one is going to be on Amityville. And so they had us all out there doing interviews and stuff. I cannot wait. It's going to be amazing.
Well, guys, what a lot of people don't realize is that when I came here, he knew George Lutz. And that's one of the reasons why I'm having him on tonight, because the house is for sale right now.
I didn't know that. Really?
Yes, the house is back on the market.
How much?
I didn't see the price on it. I think it's like
let's get it. Me and you, let's do it. We'll buy it.
Let's go buy it. So what I need is a house that can chase me out at night. It's all good.
Yeah, right.
But we'll get to that. But what I want to talk about is you have your own show. You're doing your own podcast, right?
Yeah, sort of.
Okay, tell me about it.
All right. Well, people who know me have known that for a million years now, so just about since the internet's been around. I started doing broadcasting. I started with, oh my God, what was it? CompuServe or something like that. You know, and back when it was like $1.49 a minute. And I would put together these little audio podcasts, and they were called Portraits of the Paranormal, and I'd stick them on the internet. From there, I evolved into all sorts of things, shortwave, AM, FM. We worked with Clear Channel for a while. We did a homegrown podcast. We hooked up jumper cables to a power line and broadcast that way, you know, so all kinds of crazy stuff. Done a lot of TV now. Got some TV shows under my belt. And but I've always loved this thing that you and I do called radio, you know.
Right.
It's fun. It's amazing. And now it's vodcasting. This is all the rage. I actually use the same program you use.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So this is the first time me being on the other end. as a guest, getting to see what this program does. It's pretty cool. But Jason Gowin has been with me along with my wife Trish for a long time, and we've been doing this and putting it out on a variety of topics. And I announced a few years back, it's been a while, that I was kind of going to start getting out of the paranormal, and trying to be, as Trish put it, we want to go from being a paranormal couple to a pair of normal people. So, yeah. And so just recently I had a health scare last year, and it was a tough one. It was a hard one. I almost didn't make it. But while I was in the hospital, I found a group of folks who go in and they provide entertainment for the people that are in there, and just for a few minutes of time, you get to forget the day's events and the surgeries and the chemotherapies and all the stuff and the horror that goes with hospitals. And they're cosplayers. The group is a cosplaying group. And that's what it's called. And I love it. It's a lot of fun. You dress up like some kind of crazy character and you go in and you entertain. And it's huge. And I had seen it at conventions before, conferences and things that we had been invited to. People dress up as their favorite anime character or cartoon character or something like that. I've seen a few Donald Trumps out there. I've seen Batman a million times, all of this kind of stuff. So I have been enjoying that and learning how to create costumes and make armor and do all of that stuff. Here's my latest incarnation. I'll show you right now. This is Optimus Prime. And there he is.
Cool.
And that's the headpiece for it. He's got little lights that light up in there somewhere.
That is really cool.
Yeah, isn't it? And it's there we are. Dun, dun, dun. Hello, everyone. Dun, dun, dun. So I have a Optimus Prime costume. This is the head for it. It's 8 or 9 feet tall. And when people see it, they just freak out. It's a lot of fun. And for just a few moments in a kid's life, he's not thinking about what's coming, or what's going to happen that day, or the therapy work, or the surgery, or all of that kind of stuff. So it's something that Jason turned me on to. Actually, Gowin is an amazing guy. And he has like a movie-ready Ninja Turtle outfit that he paid thousands of dollars for. And this thing is ready to go, man. And he's been doing that for 10 years, 15 years now, something like that. So it's just a hobby that we got into.
How long does it take you, to build a helmet like that?
It can be a while. Let me show you. Let me get some stuff here right behind me. Okay. This is the stuff that we use right here. Here's an example of some of it. This is just a little shaving that I got back here. This is called EVA foam, and it's pliable. I can't find my camera. There we go. It's pliable, and it's the same thing that they make kitchen floor mats out of. Okay. If you go to an automotive store or Harbor Freight or Home Depot, any of those places, you can buy 4 or 5 of these giant mats, 2 foot by 2 foot something, and you can buy 5 or 6 of them for about $20. And then you take a pattern that you can get on the internet and you start to build helmets. And here's one that I'm working on right now, and it's just, there it is. It's just EVA foam. And then you can turn it and decorate it and start to create your helmet.
Nice.
So it's one of many things that we do, and we're just now starting up a podcast about it.
That's awesome. That's really awesome.
Fun.
I know I've seen people, build stuff for Star Wars. The different flight helmets for Star Wars and stuff online. So I know
the stormtroopers.
Yeah, the stormtroopers and all that stuff. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I also noticed that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's a lot of fun, And the reason I've always been fascinated with it, who doesn't want to dress up and be Batman, right?
Right.
So I had a particular, Trish and I met a little guy about 5 years old. And he was going through radiation treatment for cancer, and he was having a tough go of it, and all of this stuff that comes with that. And we met in the hallway, and he was just the coolest kid. And 5 or 6 minutes later, he had to go. It was time for his treatment, and you would hear the screams down the hallway, and it tore me apart. And I thought, what can somebody do to, just be there for a moment for somebody going through that? And when I went through my scare last year, we had a guy who came in with a little monkey puppet kind of thing. And he came in, and they had people who brought in pet dogs and stuff that you could pet, all of that. And it really was magic. It took a few moments out of your day away where you weren't thinking about, oh my gosh, the meds, the pain, the nonsense, the stuff that comes with being in a hospital, So it was something that was really important to me.
What a wonderful thing.
Yeah,
That'd be
it's
fun
fun.
to get into. That would be really fun to get into. Little kids. Because kids are really scared of stuff.
Yeah, when you go to conventions, they have cosplay conventions now. And a good friend of mine, Vicky in Irving, Santiago, run one called UltraCon down here in South Florida. And you see kids come in, special needs kids, people that are on the spectrum, things like that. And you see the transformation that happens. They come in, and I've seen some who are like nonverbal, and their mom's helping them, come in. And then they put that costume on. And you see the transformation that happens. All of a sudden, there's somebody different, and they're completely just having a blast and a good time. I've seen nothing but positivity come from it, and it's something I like to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There's also I was looking at your website, and you also do other stuff. You do, like life counseling, right?
Yeah.
Did I read that right?
Growing up and being as weird as I was as a kid and dealing with some of the stuff that I dealt with. Now, I have no college degree. I barely made it out of high school. But life experience has taught me that there's a set of principles that are wrapped around this thing that we call the paranormal, especially violent hauntings. There's a set of laws that kind of go along with it. And I've been really blessed in these 11 or 12 years now since we've last seen each other to know just about everybody in the business. And with that came a lot of other horror survivors. I wanted to get out there, and when I first started talking about what happened to me, I was like, I'd spend 45 minutes telling people my story, and then the monster did this, and the monster did that, and the thing came out from under the bed, because I didn't realize that there were so many people who had experienced the same thing. And I'd met people like Stephen LaChance, Carmen Snedeker, Mary Pasquarella Downey, Ed Warren, Lorraine Warren, you name it, we know each other. Any horror movie that you have seen lately, from Annabelle to The Conjuring to The Uninvited to you name it, I know the people that lived through that. Quietly behind the scenes in these 12 years, we have been friends, and we get together and we ask each other questions. What happened to you? How did it happen? Did this happen to you? And we would get feedback back and forth going, well, how did you stop it? What happened? What did you have to do? So we would ask lots and lots of questions. We began to see commonalities and patterns and things that developed, that happened, that we all experienced. And we found out that those same commonalities were present in how to alleviate this stuff. We all kind of took a very similar path through this world of dark and violent hauntings. And the ones of us that had successful outcomes, we found out it's a lot of hard work, but we got to a place where we could actually list the things that create a violent haunting, that keep it going and how to alleviate those violent hauntings. And and so that's what we've been sharing. When you say counseling,
Right.
that's really what we're doing. We're just giving people empowerment. We're uplifting people who are going through something that they don't understand and showing them the path that we took to get through it.
Okay, cool. Is there a particular place that people can contact you to have that done or to work with you with that?
Yeah, I kind of have a really toe up ragtag website right now.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of ideas that I'm trying to meld together into this jumble of a website. So one week it's a cosplay website. The next week it's a violent haunting website. The next week,
Okay.
God knows what it is. But it's timyancey.com. And it's
Okay.
right down there, my name. Where is it? Right there.
Okay.
.com. And you can go there. You can reach me at timyancey@comcast.net if you need to. And that's how you get a hold of us these days.
Okay, great. Now, I know everybody's waiting to hear about it, so let's get rolling on it.
Let's do it.
How did you meet George Lutz?
Oh, Lord. Long story. You ready? Get the coffee out.
I got popcorn.
There we go. So when I was a young kid, it's been shown on a few documentaries now. The best one out there is a series called A Haunting. And season 7, episode 2 is The Shadow Man. So if you look that up on YouTube, you can actually buy or rent the series. It's like $1.99 for our episode. My brother and I experienced a violent haunting that lasted in our home for a long time, years. My parents didn't understand what was going on. They didn't get it. Over time, my mom began to realize, wow, this is real. The stuff that they're talking about, stuff moving around. She started to see stuff going on in the house and hear voices and people talking and thumps and bangs and stuff. So we started looking for some kind of information out there. And you got to realize this was in the 60s and early 70s that this was going on for us. And we go to the library and look for books and stuff, and you couldn't find anything. There was this new guy called Hans Holzer who was out there who was talking about stuff. And there was Ed and Lorraine Warren. And they had books out there, but they didn't tell you how to fix it. There were stories about hauntings that they had worked on. So in an effort to try to reach out to anybody, I think it was my mom, actually, who wrote a letter to the publishers of the Amityville Horror, because that book, when it came out, rang true for us. There's very similar experiences, same kind of things were going on, the same kind of phenomenon. So my parents, I think, wrote a letter. They answered it. Somehow it got to George. Now, this wasn't in the days of the internet. You had to, put a stamp on it and send it.
Right.
And they got in touch with us. And that started a friendship that lasted until George passed away.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about George. What was George like?
George was, oh my gosh, mysterious, funny, very knowledgeable, very spiritual. He was a devout Catholic. He worked in the soup kitchens with the Salvation Army to serve homeless people food on Thanksgiving, those kind of things. Kathy Lutz had a ministry that fed thousands of homeless people. They were very devout in their faith. George was a friendly guy who would... I'll give you an example of George Lutz. We were at a conference one time. We had invited to speak in North Carolina. It was Hickory, North Carolina, a conference center up there. And George knew that everywhere he went and talked about this stuff, there was going to be a family that was having a problem. And this little girl probably 5, 6 years old. He was done. Once he was done with the presentation, I'd seen a family over there in the corner kind of thing, and they were watching him really close. We had done a book signing. They were there at Barnes and Noble. We were at the conference that night. He did his talk, and he was signing stuff for people, books and things like that. And the little girl came up and she goes, "Excuse me." He said, "Yeah, honey." He says, "Do the bad people ever go away?" Was her question. We talked with the parents. We found out that there was something that was going into this girl's room at night, and it would grab articles of her clothing that she had been wearing, and it would sit in the corner of the room and cackle at her and say things to her, and it would hold her clothes, and it would sniff her clothing and smell her clothing and stuff, and just a lot of stuff going on. That night, George called the first investigator who went into Amityville. Her name was Mary Downey. And if you watch the article or the Shock Doc series about Ed and Lorraine Warren, Mary Downey is mentioned in that prominently. She's the person who actually taught Ed and Lorraine Warren this stuff. She had a school accredited at university. She did a program called The Rare and Unusual, and she was the first person that went into the Amityville house, actually. After she worked on that case, she retired. That was it. She was done, and she moved to Florida. You can't be retired in the paranormal. You know that. I know that. We're always working on stuff. We're always doing things. So she did work some FBI cases and stuff after that, but she was done with the ghost stuff after that case. Where were we going with that question? I'm sorry.
I have no idea. We're just here.
I don't remember.
My question, too, is that where George is concerned, I know there were rumors that they had purchased the house, they ran over their heads, and this is why they concocted this story.
Yeah.
What was your take on it?
They had spent the summer, it was a new home for a new marriage. They both had houses. George had one in Deer Park. Kathy had a house as well. And the idea was to combine the family, to sell one house, move into the other, eventually sell that off and find a house that was a good fit for them. They had looked at 30 or 40 homes over the summer, and eventually the realtor, whose name was Edith Evans, said, they couldn't find a house that was just the right thing for them. And finally she said, "Let me show you how the other half of Amityville lives." And they took them to the house at 112 Ocean Avenue. Beautiful Dutch colonial, 3 stories, including a basement, pool, garage, boat, house. It was everything they were looking for because they had a boat. And so it really appealed to them. When Kathy went into the house, she just fell in love with it. She was really attracted to the house. So the first mortgage company that they applied to, I think it was Columbia Savings and Loan, it was $80,000 for that house. They got an approval right away. Kathy's house sold first. They moved into George's while the house was, getting ready and being prepared. And when they moved in, George was very successful. He had a successful surveying company, a land surveying company, and it wasn't a problem. The 2 houses they sold easily paid for the house that they'd moved into. So what a lot of people don't know is after they moved out, they had planned on fixing the house and moving back in. They continued making payments on that house for another 4, 5, 6 months after they moved out. And then finally they were told that we can't fix this house. Ed and Lorraine Warren told them, "We can't fix this." Father Ralph Pecoraro, who was the father who went in and blessed the house and who was involved in the case, told him, nothing we could do with this house. So what do? You got a house you can't live in. They did not want to sell it to anyone because now they're dumping their problems on somebody else. So the decision was made that they would just give it back to the bank. But there was never any issues when I've heard that said they got in over their head, this and that. It's not true. not true. Kathy's house sold for, I think, $32,000, and I don't remember what George's house sold for, but there was no financial issues on it.
So what kind? I mean, if you were talking with George about, did George call you or anything? How did you find out about what was going on in the house?
Well, I had read the book
Okay.
when I was younger. I still have that book around here somewhere, and I've got all these autographs in it from everybody that's involved in the case. It's very special to me. But I had read the book, and my mom had read the book. We found it in the library locally when my mom had gone there looking for books about ghosts and stuff. She had tried a lot of things to fix our house. She had bought an Ouija board and sat and tried to communicate that way, and that didn't work. I remember that ended up in our closet somewhere. And we looked for books and stuff. There wasn't anything out there except for this one. So George and I, over the years, kept in touch. Eventually, he invited me to go to a conference that he was appearing at. I think it was another fad that's out there, just like cosplay, is haunted houses, haunted attractions. This Halloween, maybe not so much, but usually on Halloween, there's tons of haunted houses that you can go and pay to walk through. Halloween Horror Nights is an example. So a group had come to him to talk about doing the new movie that Ryan Reynolds did. And with that was an offer to do an Amityville licensed style house. And I think it was MGM Grand wanted to do it, where they were going to, this is what I was told, they were going to recreate the house at MGM in Las Vegas, an actual full-scale walkthrough replica of Amityville, and it was going to be a haunted house, and they wanted George to work on it with them. So they were working on that, and that's why he had been invited to these conferences to go to a haunted vendors. You know, they have annual conventions where they sell their products and stuff. And
Right.
so he had appeared at that and was talking about Amityville. He invited me to go. And we stuck like glue, man. He never went anywhere after that I wasn't there. And what would happen is we would just bombard each other with questions about what had happened to us, you know. And he was very patient in explaining it to me. He introduced me to all the giants in the business of paranormal phenomenon and ghost investigation. Ed Lorraine, John Zaffis, Lou Gentili, other haunted survivors that people have never heard about, you know. And we were just really, really good friends.
That's interesting. Very interesting. So what kind of person was he?
He was a very interesting guy, very intelligent. If you want an example of who and what George Lutz was, one of the best interviews that ever happened was with him and Art Bell on Coast to Coast. Art Bell was retiring, if you remember Coast to Coast AM, the overnight show. Art was getting ready to retire, and George wanted to go on before Art passed up on the show. So he called him, and they arranged it, and it was one of the ones just a few weeks before Art retired. And you can hear him with somebody who's really intelligent, a very, very good interviewer, talk about Amityville. And you'll notice right away the guy's smart. He's really smart. He's very funny. He's easy to talk to. He's easy to approach. He also had a spiritual side of him that was trying to understand what this stuff was, how this energy worked, and more on the spiritual side of things. He was really looking at things like prayer, meditation, those kind of things as tools to help alleviate some of this stuff. So that's the kind of person that he was. And anytime I needed something, even when I didn't think I needed him, he would call. He had a huge network of friends around the country. He lived in Las Vegas, had a house. Loved to work on cars. He was a car guy. I'm a cosplay guy. He's a car guy. But that's who he was, and he was really good. He didn't seem to get along with the kids. You remember Kathy had some kids, and Chris, Danny, Missy, and I don't know. You've seen the stuff that's out there. They seem to get along. At that time, I've met or talked with all of them, and I think that at the end of his life, just before he passed, he was starting to make some inroads with them, and then he passed on, and that's what it was. It was sad, unfortunately.
I have a question in the chat room. What makes your, let's see, I can blind too. What makes your life stories to Amityville? I think that's what she's saying.
Carol, what do you mean by that? I'm not sure. What makes our life stories? What makes them comparable? Is that what you're asking? We would see shadows in our house at night, walking across the room, through the hallways, that kind of thing. That was something that had happened. Kathy would be touched. Something would come up and embrace her like a hug from behind. It was same thing was happening to us. We would see things that were just impossible to see, like Jody, the pig, looking through a third-story window, looking through the glass, that kind of thing. So there are a lot of commonalities. If you look at a lot of the violent hauntings that are out there that are going on, it starts that way. It's subtle things that begin to happen, and they escalate slowly over time. And the family starts to isolate themselves one from the other. You think you're crazy. You don't want to say anything to anybody. You hear knocking sounds or something touches you at night while you're sleeping, those kind of things. And you think, God, I must be crazy. I'm not going to tell Trish, or I'm not going to tell Dad, those kind of things. So that was going on. And George and Kathy fled the house. It wasn't in the middle of the night like in the movie. It was actually a process of waking up the next morning after a particularly violent night and just getting through that day of trying to pack stuff, get stuff into the van, and go to Kathy's mom's house. There comes a point when this stuff becomes less scary, less frightening, and more annoying. You know what I mean? Night after night, the sheets getting pulled off, that kind of thing. And for them, it was the process of here we are another day. And Father Ralph Pecoraro said, look, can't you just leave the house? Can't just for a night or a couple of days, go somewhere else and get out of that environment for a little while? Because they never wanted to leave the house. And same thing was happening with us. And he said it in just the right way. George told me that they decided that they were going to leave the house for a while. So they went and went to Kathy's mom's house. They contacted the first paranormal investigator they contacted was a guy that was in the phone book. And he was actually a vampirologist. His name was Stephen Kaplan. And he was this odd, quirky kind of guy. He had a briefcase with duct tape on the side with his name and vampirologist on it, and he had stakes and a hammer and all of that stuff. And it was somebody that they didn't really want to turn this investigation over to. So the next people they contacted, Laura DiDeo was a news crew that was investigating what was going on out there, and she put him in touch with Ed and Lorraine Warren, and so that's how that happened. But we reached out to George, and they responded to us and helped us with what was going on with our house.
Carol's asking, is what happened to you still following you?
Not anymore. We went through quite a process. This is something that happened in our house for years and years, and it moved from one person in our family to the next to the next. It started with my brother, moved to me, and then as we got older and moved out of the house and started going with our lives, it fixated on my mom. in particular. And there came a point in 2008, 2009, somewhere around in there, where the house became unlivable. You couldn't stay in it. This stuff was happening. The sounds of the whole house being destroyed, my mom being locked in her room, in a bedroom, scared of what's going on, hearing what sounds like the TV crashing on the floor, glass breaking, stuff being ripped apart. And after that settling down, opening the door and the house is just fine. It had been that sound. So that kind of stuff was going on. And Trish and I moved her out of this house. This is the house that I'm in now. This is the house that she lived in when that stuff was going on. And we moved her in with us in a 2-bedroom house. And she lived with us because you couldn't live in this house. It was impossible. And this house sat abandoned, unlivable for over a year. It would call 911 when we weren't here. The neighbors would see people peering in our windows or peering out of our windows at night. My next door neighbor across the way. The neighbor on the other side would call the police all the time because she was hearing laughter coming from the house or coming from the yard. Stuff was knocking on her windows, that kind of thing. And so we didn't know what to do. What do you do with a house you can't live in? This is a nice house. It's a 2-story. It's got 4 or 5 bedrooms in it, 3 baths, huge space, it's a beautiful house, and we couldn't live in it. So what do you do with that?
How'd you get it taken care of?
A lot of work.
You could live in it. Yeah.
In the haunting series, they show, that we contacted a paranormal team, and they came over and blessed the house, and everything was good.
Right.
It didn't work that way. It didn't translate well to TV that we had to work on this house. First thing we had to do was make a decision that this stops here and it stops now. There comes a point when you make a decision that you're no longer a victim of something and you're going to be a survivor of it. And that's what we had to do. And Trish was a huge help. And so was George in explaining that. From there, you have to educate yourself. You have to look at the things that are causing it. What's feeding it? What's driving it? What's creating all of the banging and the noise and stuff? And for us, I came from a severely dysfunctional family. We had a dad who wasn't a great dad. He could be pretty violent at times. And there was a lot of abuse that happened in our home. That dysfunction, that negative energy, that hatred for each other that a family can have sometimes built and built and built. And it just kept festering and creating a really negative space that you could feel when you came in the house. Understanding how to get rid of that and working on the house. Trish had a lot of conversations with this home, as strange as that sounds. And we would come in here and say, look, this is our home. This is our space. There's no room for negative energy in here. There's not going to be undignified spirit here. And we ain't doing it. It's not going to happen. My house today is filled with, when you go to Walmart and they have those little signs that say live, love, laugh, and believe, and this house is the home. Yeah, all those little affirmative little signs. We're full of them in this house. They're all over the place, and they're always reminders for us to keep the energy right, and it's something that I really work on. We worked for years and years hating each other, and then we got to move into a house, claim our space, and practice those principles, those spiritual principles, to keep us aligned, keep us in a place of center and balance, and move on with our lives. And we haven't had anything going on in here probably for a few years now.
Oh, wonderful. Carol's been busy today. It's okay.
Carol's working it, right?
Yeah, she's working it. She's working that chat room. She's asking, what do you think of the paranormal programs that are on now?
Oh, boy. Here's where we're going to get in trouble. Of course, this stuff became real popular once. I think it was Jason and Grant are the ones that really started this off. Ghost hunters. There had always been paranormal shows, sightings with Tim White and the one Leonard Nimoy did, In Search of, and all of those. But for the first time, you got to follow along and be in the house with investigators. They weren't telling the story, you were in it. And people were fascinated because they were getting footage of stuff going on. I know Jason and Grant. I've met them. We've been at conferences and conventions before. And I think what you see on television is just about as accurate as TV can portray what investigators are doing. My problem with it is they're more interested in not the groups, because Jason and Grant do help people. They really do. All of these groups that are out there are really working now with families to try to alleviate what's happening out there and get them in touch with people that can help them. But when it first came out, boy, I was pissed because you would see a bunch of blinky lights on TV. There's not a lot going on, and it didn't translate well to television. So they had to create a visual representation of a ghost, something that could show up on TV and be proof of a ghost. So all of a sudden we had all these electronic toys and blinky lights and EMF detectors and Boo Bears and REM pods and shiznats and you name it. They got it out there. And for me, that wasn't a ghost. Really? I just had my collarbones broken by an entity in the middle of the night, and you're going to tell me that blinky light is a ghost? Please. And that was the attitude that I had. Then, with pressure from a lot of the TV producers that are out there, you started seeing some fakery going on. The old collar tug episode and the one where the chair slid across the floor and you could see the string. Yeah. That kind of stuff started happening. And that's when I really lost it. I went ape. And you don't get to proclaim yourself a paranormal investigator and that you're honest and we're the best and pull that kind of crap. So we had some arguments. I was really outspoken with that. So nowadays I have to understand that this is entertainment. And while they are ghost hunting groups that are out here that are doing this stuff, they followed a template that was laid down kind of by those shows, Ghost Hunters International, and that. And that's what people are doing. They're copycatting what they've seen. And you don't really see on television a lot of help for the families. Okay, your house is haunted. Here's our evidence. Bye.
That's true.
What are you doing that?
That's true.
Yeah.
Then there's the other guys, the GA guys. I don't even get into that. When people ask me about them, I'm just like, see ya.
Which ones? I don't want
to talk about it. GA.
What's
Ghost
that?
Adventures. Ghost Adventures.
Oh. Yeah, let's not.
Get me started on
if there's a ghost in this house, I want you to grab my ear. Come on. Could you be more melodramatic than that? Than the stuff that you see on there, And okay, if that's your cup of tea, fine. But it's so much more interesting. And we got pitched, Trish and I got pitched to do shows and stuff, to go into a house and work with them. You're a ghost investigator. How many times out of 10 is it actually a ghost versus something else? 9 times out of 10, 8, 7, how many?
Like maybe 4, if you're lucky. 3 to 4. Very seldom.
Very seldom is it actually a ghost.
Yeah.
Okay. Wouldn't that be so much more fascinating to walk into a house and work with a family? And and I know, sometimes it's easier to say there's a ghost in the house than to admit that you've been cutting yourself.
Right.
Or that there's an abuse issue. Or that you're hearing voices because of a medical issue, or that somebody may be on the spectrum and they're just overwhelmed. Auditory hallucinations, visual hallucinations, things like that. Sometimes it's the house itself making a creaking sound every night because wood expands and contracts. And as the sun moves across the sky and heats up different parts of the house, it makes cracking sounds sometimes. that kind of stuff. So we go in and we look at all of the issues that are there. And we find out that, guess what? Maybe it's not a ghost. Maybe it's a kid who's scared to sleep at night because their parents are in the other room blasting the TV at 10 o'clock at night watching GA.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that was easy. And sometimes, guess what? Sometimes it is a ghost.
Right.
And then you have to deal with that issue as well. So we go in and we try to provide people with tools that will help them. Get them in touch with counselors. Now, look, I'm not a professional. You're not a professional counselor.
Oh.
None of us are. We love investigating ghosts. But if we find somebody who's in trouble and who needs help in another arena, we got to connect them and get them to those professionals. Guess what? Schools have counselors and they're free. And you can take a kid, walk them right in there, have them sit down and talk with a qualified professional for no cost whatsoever. Sometimes people have abuse issues. Dad is smacking mom around, that kind of thing.
Right. Right.
What happened to you? Oh, I got scratched. What do you do with that? So again, that's another issue. Sometimes folks are having drug addictions, alcohol addictions, things like that, and they're misinterpreting what's happening in the house. You got to get them to professionals that can deal with that. And I have no knowledge of that stuff, but I can take you by the hand. I can say, hey, listen, come on. We're going to go see a psychiatrist, and we're going to go to AA. We're going to go to Al-Anon, whatever. And I got you. And we're going to do this. And let's go. And then you connect them with those people so that they can get the help that they need.
Oh, I agree 100%. I mean, a lot of teams out there don't think that way. They're in there for the thrill of going in there in the dark and jumping at every little light that goes off. But it's a huge responsibility. When you take that responsibility to go from doing commercial investigations like in the hotels and stuff, the fun stuff, when you step into doing residential investigations, it's a huge responsibility because you're dealing with people's lives.
I've been in a lot of groups and I got no problem at all with doing those kind of haunts. I was just out this past weekend at Yesteryear Village where the Riddle House is, and guess who was there? GA. And they had done some investigations out there and stuff. A real popular place here. And we do that. And we have old train museums and stuff down here. The Deering estate, I want to say. I don't know. A bunch of them that are out here. And we do that. And I meet people and I get to talk to them. But at the same time, people like to be scared, and that's okay. And we bring them out, and they listen to the recorders, and they hear the voices on them, and they see the blinky lights and stuff, and that's fine. That's good. I got no problem with it. But there's also another side of this stuff that I would love to expose to the public and take them out on real investigations and meet real people and see what's going on. Right. One of the ones that I did like was called Paranormal State. It was with Ryan Buell and them. And they would do that. They would take you into residential houses where there was dark stuff going on. And Lorraine Warren worked on that one. Chip Coffey worked on that.
They did some great research, too. They're really good at researching stuff.
Yeah. And unfortunately, Ryan had a meltdown. It was a little overwhelming for him. When you deal with dark stuff, guess what? You can attract some dark stuff to you. So he went through that, and he's better now and doing well. But you'll see that a lot of times these guys crash and burn, man, because they just can't take it. It's paranormal. It's the pressures of being on television. It's the constant work, the exhausting work that goes with that. I just went and did that Shock Docs thing. That was 3 days. I was ready to just go home, and I did a 3-day interview out in Hollywood. And I was like, man, get me out of this town. And so I can only imagine the pressure that those guys go through.
How do you feel about psychics and mediums?
I met and was dear friends with Mary Pasquarella. And I want you guys out there to do your homework and go check this lady out. There's stuff out there on her. I absolutely believe in it. Absolutely believe in mediums. I think that there's a lot of folks who are very gifted. I think there's a lot of people that also try really hard. But yeah, I mean, I've seen way too many things, even with my own wife, Trish. Trish is what is probably known as an empath. She feels things. She can pick up energies. She can be. We had a particularly bad. I took her to the Bell Witch haunting location. You remember the Bell Witch?
I remember the Bell Witch.
She went there 30 minutes and she said, I can't breathe. There's something going on. I think I have to go to the hospital. I'm like, what's going on? This is the first time we had noticed this. And she says, it feels like there's a stick in my throat and I can't breathe. And I'm like choking and it just hurts. Remembering what had happened to John Bell, he always said there was a pain in his throat, like there was a stick lodged in his throat and stuff. Man, I said, all right, get in the car, let's go. And the further we got away from that place, the better she got. So, there's something there. There's definitely something there. And if I get somebody that I trust who tells me we need to leave, we gonna leave because we can always come back tomorrow. But
right.
Yeah, I think that there really is something out there. Lorraine Warren was a walking EMF detector. She could sense energy. Mary Downey is that as well. And I've met a lot of people that are that way. My wife Trish is like that. And, that's one of the reasons I kind of poo-poo all the blinky light things, because you can walk into a home and you don't need a light to tell you that there's something bad in there, that there's negative energy, that it's heavy, that kind of thing. I think all of us can kind of feel that to one extent or another.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
You've had quite the life. I can say that. And what a lot of people don't realize, like you talk about all these things on TV with the bright, shiny lights and all that. When we started ghost hunting, they didn't have that stuff.
No.
We didn't have those toys. We were out there with our cassette recorders or whatever the hell else we had.
Well, my complaint about it all when it first started, when this started happening in the 90s, was to what end? I mean, okay, so your light went off. What does that prove? I can take and I had all them toys. Back in the 80s, I was lugging around, the big thing was the Booth brothers invented a laser grid. And you could shoot a laser grid across the floor, and if something broke the beam, you could see it. I was doing that in the 80s. I had a laser that a friend of mine who worked at a science museum gave me. And the thing had to be, you had to wear a backpack just to carry the batteries in.
That's
and
right.
the laser, just the tube itself was like this big. And we would set up mirrors around the house and we'd shoot it in one mirror and then it'd go to the next and to the next and you would build a grid. I did that back in 1987, somewhere around in there. I used to have a Panasonic reel-to-reel recorder that had to weigh 150 pounds, so I've been there and done all of that stuff. And by the time everybody else kind of caught up to it and started creating these really cool technical things, I realized, is it evidence? Is it something that's going to change the way we look at the paranormal? No, it's a blinky light. I can take a novelist and I can stand in the middle of the Amityville horror house or an EMF detector, and what's going to happen? The light is going to blink. All right?
Right.
I could take that same thing and stand in the middle of I-95 or the 101 in California and stand there, and what's going to happen? The light's going to blink. So what does it tell us? It doesn't tell us anything. It really doesn't.
Right. Right.
I do love EVPs. I love video stuff. But I don't think we're ever going to get definitive proof unless we change the way that we research this stuff. We need to go to the folks at university, the ones that are the brilliant parapsychologists, psychologists, and doctors of our day and say, what's the template? Create a template for us so that we can go out and create evidence that we can bring back to you here at university or at college or wherever, and you can analyze it, and let's go that route. Because people go, there's no experts in the paranormal. There's no such thing as experts in the paranormal. Well, guess what? There is. You had Dr. Grover Krantz, who was a brilliant archaeologist who was studying the field of Bigfoot. You had Thelma Moss. You remember her?
Yeah, I
From
remember her.
UCLA, Berkeley, parapsychologist and stuff. And there are people out there in the quantum physics realm right now that will blow you away with the
Right.
stuff that's going on out there. So we have the experts. We just haven't approached them and got the templates for how to do this stuff yet.
Here's a
Yeah.
question I have. First, have you ever been to the my mouth? Have you ever been to the Amityville house?
No, I wasn't allowed. Jason has been,
Right.
but George, I told George I was going to go. I said, hey, I'm going to take a weekend trip. I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to check out the house. He said, no, you're not. Why not? What's going on? He says, if you go to that house, that will end our friendship and we will no longer be friends. He was that frightened of that house. He says, Tim, he looked at me and he says, you're an innocent right now. And if you go to that house, the stuff that could come back with you and attach to you and the things that house has done to him, don't do it. And he did not want, you ever heard of the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Right.
Yeah, he didn't want that. You know, he didn't want it messing with his friends. He didn't want to have any direct connections to that house whatsoever. You got to remember when they left that house in Amityville, Long Island, they moved as far across the country as they could get. They moved out to California and were living out there. And, you know, they tried to get as far away from that house as they could get and separate all ties with it. Yeah, so he told me I couldn't go, and I have not been to this day. I've thought about it now that he's passed away, but I'm not going to push that button. You know why? I live in a haunted house. You know.
Do you think, like you were talking about, you know, what was going on within your family, you know, when you were growing up, you know, that could have been, you know, a draw for the activity. Do you think that that certain people will draw that activity, where certain people won't? Because I know there's people that have lived in that house since that have had no issues.
Yeah, sure. And then the right set of circumstances can come along and wake that house up again. People that George always said, the people that lived in that house after the Lutzes moved out had a much worse life. You know, their son had passed away from a drug overdose. They had divorces, all kinds of crazy stuff that had happened. But here's what I tell people when I'm working with families. You can't use terminology that is frightening to people, or else it doesn't give them any hope that they can fix this thing. So if you as a paranormal group go out into a home and you say, we think you have a demon in your house, well, you don't know what that terminology means to that particular person.
Right.
It conjures up images of monsters. It conjures up images of horned beast with a pitchfork and a tail, that kind of thing. How do you fight that? Okay. Now, I get that that's what religion teaches, that this stuff is, and that's fine. Okay. But what I explain to people is that they have a parasite that's living in their home. Okay. It's something that has been attracted to their home by the energy that's in it. It moves in. It couples with the family that's in there. It attaches itself to those people, and then it creates all the conditions necessary for its own survival. So when the energy is getting down and, you know, it needs to feed off of that energy, more bangings, more rappings, bangings on the wall, scary stuff starts happening, keeping the energy up, keeping the family off guard, keeping them from sleeping at night, just more and more feeding that chaotic energy. Have you ever been around somebody that just drives you nuts all the time? You know what I'm saying? There are people out there that as soon as you see them coming down the sidewalk, you go, oh boy, here we go. It's much like that. It's that kind of energy that you can feel. People used to talk about Elvis Presley. They said he had an aura when he walked into the room. He had a personality that just was stunning. And this is kind of that same thing. You have a house that has that kind of energy that's in it, but it's negative energy. It's negative energy. And it's built up from arguments, from drug abuse, from all the dysfunctional things that tear life apart and make life tough. There's an old saying, you know what? When you tense up, guess what? Life tenses up. And it's true. What you put out into the universe, it has a great way of taking it, making it bigger, and throwing it right back in your face. Bam. And there it is. And now you got to deal with it. So we teach people to transform or displace negative energy in their house. How do you do that stuff? Very simple. The first thing George told me, get a haircut. I was like, what? He says, you want to get rid of the haunting in your house? Try getting a haircut, because I had really long hair back then. And what he was telling me was, it's about your image. It's about how you view yourself. It's about how you feel about yourself. And I was in a place where I wasn't in a real good space at the time. Get a haircut, take a shower every day. Get out of the house more. There's people who I have gone to conventions and spoke at who pulled me to the side afterwards and said, today is the first time I've been out of my house in 4 months, and I came to see you. Wow. We teach them things like journaling. I don't want to hear you talk about the ghosts and the monster stuff. I just want you to write some positive affirmations in your journal. And they'll go for 3, 4, 5 days, and they can't write anything. They can't say anything positive. They've been programmed that way through their life experience. So we teach them how to do that kind of stuff, What else? What else is there that you can do? All kinds of things. You keep little affirmations around your home. Just little things, little things that say stuff on it that remind you of your place in the world, of your spirituality, those kind of things. We work with people who don't have any pictures on the walls. There's no decorations in their house. It's just a bare, empty house, because they move a lot and they move from one place to another. And they feel like, I don't have a place that's really a home for me. So we teach them how to do that kind of stuff. All kinds of little tools, get to church, find a faith base, get a support group. You want love in your house? Get a cat. Get a dog, a goldfish, start small, whatever. And that's what we tell them. It's about changing the energy and transforming the energy in your house. And once you do that, the rest is going to take care of itself. Excuse me.
Fabulous. Go and give us your website one more time. And
oh boy. TimYancey.com. It's a mess right now because we're working on several things. You can see my name here on the screen right below me, Tim Yancey at Comcast.net. If you want to reach out to us, that's where we're at. And you can catch me on Facebook too. Just look for this face and you'll find us out there as well.
Tim, thank you so much. Let's not make it another 12 years, okay? Let's do it sooner again.
Are you seriously, right? Let's do that. It's good to see you again. I love you guys. I wish I had a chance to see you while I was out there, but we're having a good time. The only thing I'm going to plug on your show is October 26th on the Travel Channel, Shock Docs. Watch it. It's about Amityville. All of the names, unfortunately, except the family, because they don't do this stuff no more. But all of the folks that have been closely associated with Amityville over the years are going to be on it, and it's going to be a great show. If you want to know about Amityville, you want to know about violent hauntings, watch it. Sounds
good. Thank you, Tim. It's been great. Love you. Thank you so much. You have a good one.
You take care. Bye. I'm out.
He's gone. That was my buddy Tim. It has been 12 years since I last talked to him. It was great to see him. Hopefully we'll get him on again to talk about stuff that that he's involved in and whatnot. Anyhow, maybe after he does that shock video thing. Anyway, I want to let everybody know we'll be back here at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time next week, and Janice Oberdeen is going to be with us. She's got a new book coming out, and we can talk about some of the stuff that she's been writing about, plus a lot of her experience up in Virginia City. So look us up next week, and I will see you then. And it's been fun. And check us out at www.californiahaunts.org. And if you feel the need, share this. Share it with people you don't like. Share it with people you like. I don't care. Just share it because we want to get the word out about this show so we can keep it going. Plus, We do take donations to do this show because we've got to bring you bigger and better guests and get bigger and better equipment. So if you feel the need, hop on over to the PayPal that's listed, that's running along the bottom, and maybe $4 or $5, whatever you have. I know money's tight for people, but it'd be great to help us keep doing this. Anyway, thank you very much, and I'll see you next week. Okay. Oh, there we go.